Warframe's developers, Digital Extremes, has released a full drop table for their game. Basically, every single item that is in the game now has a confirmed chance and location to end up getting it. Now, this is just an HTML document. It isn't a table format, and it's like, here's every item in every area and everything, and this is how you can end up finding it. It's not probably going to be something that's going to be too extensive for a lot of people. It's mostly going to be people like, hey, we can end up updating it to a wiki, and that's mostly where people are going to be looking for this type of stuff. But there is something specific. You can end up looking at this. Now, these drop tables have been available in the past. However, it has actually been up to data miners. A lot of news sites and things like that have been kind of saying like, oh, it's about the Chinese law, and this is what they're trying to do to abide by it. It has nothing to do with it. And actually, this wouldn't actually be affected by the Chinese law because the Chinese law is about purchased loot boxes. And this actually does not include drop rates from any sort of loot boxes because I don't think Warframe actually has loot boxes. So really, it actually has to do with data mining. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Michael here with another topic video. So if you've never played Warframe, it is a fairly grindy game, and there's a lot of freaking items to find in that game. They mostly go down to mods and parts for items. So basically, you find blueprints to end up crafting these sort of things. You get materials such as, you know, materials that you would end up to use in these blueprints, and you can find different types of mods. Now, if you want to try to figure out where to find these things, it can be a little bit of a pain in the bun. And back in the closed beta, back when I played the most, is basically it was impossible to figure out where things dropped because the game really didn't tell you anywhere. And I haven't played it enough recently to tell you whether it has. I know the last time I did play it, they had a huge ship update, and they actually added it so that each location would tell you what materials it dropped and stuff like that. And so they have sort of fixed up this problem, but it never actually told you the percentage of chances. And people kind of got used to having it. And the culture that kind of built up around it back in the past was the fact that data miners were able to kind of grab onto Warframe very, very quickly, and it was one of those cases to where basically we just got used to having this information in public wikis. Now, it was always assumed, and so data miners would look at the code and be like, oh, well, this is how the code works, and this is the percentage chances I think it would be, and so some of those values have been shown to be a little bit incorrect. But at the same time, it was actually fairly nice to know where things dropped, and I really, really liked having that information, along with a lot of other people. However, recently, Digital Extremes, I guess this isn't a recent development, but rather they've been sending cease and desists and trying to get data miners to stop data mining, because data mining is a very dangerous thing to have, especially since it goes into more than just drop tables. Now, you could obviously try and justify it. It's like, oh, hey, well, that's information that they don't have in the game, and we'd like to have that. That's not the only thing that ends up getting data mined, however. There's a lot of different sort of situations to where you'll end up having trade secrets or specific items or maybe content releases in the future that they don't necessarily want everyone to know about. There's been plenty of cases to where basically they would end up going into, you know, specifically like games like Warframe, to where they're like, oh, well, we're working on this thing. It's not 100% going to exist, and we don't actually know if it'll be in the game or not. However, people will data mine it and get super hyped about it, and then that causes a bunch of problems for the studio as well. It's like, oh, maybe this content wasn't good enough to release, and maybe it causes problems, and then it causes outcry, and there's a bunch of problems with data mining. And I'm not going to get into the logistics of it, because basically there are legal reasons that it's kind of bad as well, but for the most part, it can cause a lot of problems for development studios. And so basically, yeah, they don't want people data mining their game, and that's understandable. Nobody really wants people data mining their game, because we have a lot of trade secrets. Some people don't care, but that's mostly indie devs, and they are technically an indie dev, but at the same time, I think they're owned by Perfect World now, actually, so they're no longer anyways, that's a different topic. But this is actually a pretty cool thing, because the community is like, hey, we really want these drop tables, and Digital Extremes is like, you know what? Sure, we can have that, because it's not really going to impede anything about their sort of structure and stuff like that. The only reason they want people to stop data mining is because, well, they don't want people data mining. It's quite simple as that. And so just kind of going out there and being like, all right, you know what, guys, here's the full drop table. And what they've been doing, like, periodically is kind of updating these things on wikis and having unconfirmed, but now all these drop tables are actually confirmed, and now people know where to find items specifically, and they know the chances. This is actually a very extensive list. Now, you could say, like, oh, hey, they're just trying to appease their community. This is actually way more extensive than we've ever had before. It's one of those situations to where it actually has a lot of freaking items on it. It has items that you wouldn't even like think to actually have on the wiki as well, like all common items, and it's a specific percentages. Now, the concern is that this list won't be updated, and that's possible. I don't think that it's going to be one of those things where Digital Extremes is going to go out of their way to end up fixing up and making sure that it's 100% accurate, because a lot of small like balance adjustments and things like that happen all the time, and so keeping a list like that updated is very, very difficult. And this is something that we ended up finding through just data mining itself. Like, data mining would always have to change because they would change the location of data, and so basically they would have to go through and be like, oh, well, this is possibly out of date because this is the update it was from. And so yeah, now that we actually have an actual sort of baseline, however, we can actually say like, oh, well, these are the general chances, and the chances of these changing are going to be a lot less likely, and there isn't going to be errors such as like, oh, well, we predicted that this would be the chance and stuff like that. Now, some people have been saying like, oh, these chances seem really, really low. Like, oh, this item has a 6% chance of dropping. The thing is, most of the time when they release drop tables and stuff like that like this, it's like very, very specific cases and normally has to do with endgame chests. The way Warframe works, however, it's on specific enemies and specific boxes and destructibles and things. And so it's like you're in an environment, you are going to be mowing down hundreds of enemies in that game. And so basically a 6% chance probably means you're going to find at least 6 of them during a single mission. It's ridiculously number of enemies you fight in that game. And so basically, yeah, that's actually pretty high chance. And there's some, it's like 0.02%, and that's going to be like the rare stuff. And some people have been like, oh, this is why I haven't been finding these items and stuff like that, because there's certain drops, such as the despair drop rate, which I don't think was ever data mined before, or at least I had never heard of it being data mined. They actually had the official kind of announcement on that. And so they're actually releasing more information than we already had. It's not like they went through the wiki and been like, oh, this is what was data mined, and so we're just going to release that information, be stingy. No, they've actually just said, hey, here's the entire drop tables. And that's something I really, really enjoy. And it actually makes me want to go play Warframe again, mostly because I kind of missed the game. It was really, really fun back in the day, but at the same time, this is a really consumer-friendly thing, and I think that a lot of games should end up doing this, because I feel like a lot of people have been like, oh, well, if they know the chances, they're not going to go looking, because it's like, why even bother if it's like a 0.00001% chance? The thing is, if you know the chances, I feel like it kind of motivates you, because you at least know there's a guaranteed chance it is going to be there. I've seen this pop up in a lot of other dungeon crawling MMOs before. Specifically, Phantasy Star Online 2, which I play quite a lot, actually has a very interesting take on this as well. It actually has a drop table to where it is actually built by the community. And so basically what happens is when you're going through a mission, when you end up finding an item, it adds that to that drop list and the percentage of chance to find it in a single run. And so basically, you know, in a single run of that mission, it will calculate based off of that. So like, let's say every single time somebody runs that mission, if they find at least one of this item, the drop rate will be 100%. That's actually a super, super interesting feature, and I always forget that it exists. But when I'm like, oh, I need this specific item, or I want to find a specific craftable, I'm like, oh, where can I find this? And I just go look at the drop tables for every single mission. And it's actually really, really cool to have that information. And I feel like with that information, it allows me to kind of look at, like, what do I want to run, and what can I run, and what is actually preferred, what has a better chance for this, what has a better chance for that. And I feel like it kind of builds up community around certain things, and as long as it's balanced properly, which these drop tables seem to be balanced fairly well as well. I mean, Warframe is a fairly old game at this point. It's been around for a very long time. I can't remember exactly how long, but I played it years ago back in closed beta, so it's been around for a pretty long time. So they've been able to kind of adjust based off of whatever they needed. But it's actually really interesting, because now it's like, oh, hey, you know, I can go to these regions and I can kind of combine this. You can kind of optimize and like, hey, I want to get these 2 items. So then it actually promotes you to go playing more rather than just kind of randomly running around and getting lost. If you don't know exactly where you're supposed to go, it can make that feeling of like, I don't know where to go, so why am I playing? And there's no kind of benefit to doing this. To whereas it's like, oh, well, I can run this mission instead and actually have 2 chances, and it'll actually make people kind of run a little bit more, which kind of plays into the whole Skinner box, which the game has kind of, I guess, capitalized on for a very long time. But at the same time, game's fun, game's enjoyable, it's a good game, and I think this is actually a really cool idea. And I hope that more games and more developers actually look at this and be like, hey, you know what? People like having this drop information, and I think it's really, really cool. And no, this has nothing to do with the Chinese law. It's kind of annoying to see that, because it's like the Chinese law actually doesn't affect actual drops in the game whatsoever. It only talks about microtransactions. And since this is not microtransactions, the only microtransactions in Warframe are like shortcuts, and so you can like buy specific weapons instead of grinding for them, or you can speed up crafting and things like that, which is fine. You know, they didn't release the chances for that, because literally the chances for that are 100%. They just actually released the drop rates for the game. So, for example, the game in the background, Torchlight 2, it'd be like having every single enemy having a specific item they would drop, and it would give you that percentage chances. Now, it is unfortunate that it doesn't tail this information inside of the game, but it would actually be really, really cool to see them in the future kind of look at ways to do that. And if they're willing to actually release this information, it means it's on the wikis, the public wikis and everything, which if you play that game enough, you're definitely going to be using those, because you need to know what items do, and there's a lot of obscured information in the game like that, especially a game to where it doesn't have an in-game glossary to where you can actually look at every single item. And so it's on those public wikis, which means it's completely public, and it would be really, really cool if they actually implement that inside the game. Now, I haven't played for a really long time, so I don't know if they're actually looking at doing that, or if they already have systems to do that in the first place. I know that they started adding in drop like locations for like materials and things like that, especially when they added in the bots that can go to specific locations and actually go and grind items for you. It's been a long time, and anybody who's currently playing Warframe probably knows that just by the way of talking about it, but yeah, I don't know. I really hope they actually find an interesting way to implement it. Like, let's say a run percentage chance as well. Like, it has mission reward chances on that list as well. And so it'd be like, oh, well, there's this percentage of chance of actually getting this item, even if it's a mission reward. And that would be a really cool system, because I like that in Phantasy Star Online too. I think it's a really cool system. And it's kind of a little bit more along the lines of what people are actually looking for, rather than just a straight up percentage on this is what it has to drop on a specific enemy. Although that is nice to know as well. And it does say that in the Phantasy Star Online 2 as well. It has 2 different lists, I believe, and it has one where it's like, oh, this is the enemy that dropped it, and this is the chances of that happening. It's actually really, really cool. Anyways, I'm going to end this here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this one. Game in the background has been Torchlight 2. It's a game that has drops. That's literally the only connection I can make. I was like looking through my list. I'm like, I don't have Warframe downloaded, and I don't have the time to download it, and I don't have the hard drive space to also download it. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll just kind of play something else that has drops in it. And Torchlight 2 does. And I just continued off with the last character that I was playing, which was probably in the last video that this was in. So I apologize for that. But regardless, yeah, Torchlight 2, it's a fun little kind of Diablo-style game made by some of the original guys, and it's pretty freaking fun. It's pretty old at this point, though. Unfortunately, the mobile adaptation, oh god, healing, what is the healing button? I don't remember any of the hotkeys. Z, okay, Z is the healing button. I haven't played it in a while, so I'm like completely lost on what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't even know what build I was going for. I leveled up right before this video started, and I'm like, I don't know what to level on here, but regardless, it's a fun game. It's fairly old at this point, but that also means you can get it for pretty cheap, and there's a ton of mods for it, which I haven't even dabbled into, but I might do that one day. And yeah, anyways, leave your comments below what you think about these drop tables as well. Some people have said like, oh, well, this discourages people from actually grinding and finding... I don't believe in that. I actually believe it's actually quite the opposite, especially for me specifically. I look at that and I'm like, oh, hey, now I want to go and play that specific area, and it actually promotes me to look for specific items because it makes it easier to grind for things. If I'm just not able to grind for it, I'm just going to play for a little bit just for the fun of the game. But then once the game is like one of those situations where it's like, oh, well, now it feels grindy, I'm not getting any progress, I don't really care. And so I end up looking up drop tables and things like that. And that's when I actually start, you know, getting into the game and doing what they want me to do, which is continuously play it nonstop. Because it's like, oh, this area has a specific item that I can get, and I want to get that item because it will make my game more fun, and then I actually go for it and stuff. But not everyone agrees with me. Obviously, that is one of those things that's going to be entirely subjective depending on the type of person you are and the type of grinding you like to do. But for the most part, I think this is a super cool idea, and I wish that more games had it, although it is not going to work for every single type of game. There are games that have drop tables that it would not necessarily make sense for, and so basically those types of games will probably not need them. I'll probably end up doing a discussion, more in-depth discussion on that topic in the future in Design View. But at any point, if you want to go ahead and subscribe for that, go ahead. But I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Thank you guys so much for watching, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next video. Also, hopefully the audio in this one wasn't too bad. I just had some audio driver issues, and I just fixed them. So hopefully not too bad. Also, it is super freaking hot in my room, which is why I'm kind of a little bit brain dead at the moment at this closing. So apologies. I'm going to go turn on that fan because I really need it on.